everyone, and welcome to our interview. Arcane Mark asks, John Compton.
Welcome, John.
Welcome.
Hello, good to be here.
Good to have you. Nice surprise for you that we have John Compton on today. John Compton coming from a place that is very familiar to all of us.
Yes, do you guys recognize that room? It is a very, very Paizo room.
Ooh,
it's the conference
the panning
room.
of the conference room. That's a great place to play games, too.
Yeah, but mostly it's a place for having organized play meetings.
Yes, that's right.
Talk about the latest possibilities of what could lie ahead for our storylines, but also the moments where we're like, oh, we really want to make sure that we can add an incentive for this, or these people want this. How make it happen?
So, yes. Well, we were just earlier this week talking about a pair of heavy meta plot scenarios from the season. You know which one we're talking about? That pair.
I imagine so. Yeah.
Yes.
It's that one.
That one. No, I'm super excited, and it was really good because this is our first big brainstorming meeting to include James Case as well.
Yep. So let's start with our usual first question, John. How did you get started playing Pathfinder? Or if you prefer, gaming?
So gaming was something I started around like age 6 because I had an older cousin. He's like maybe 10 years older than I am, who gave my older brother and me a D&D book that was... It wasn't even like a core rule book. It was one of those advanced series ones from Proto First Edition. It was like, here you go, you guys figure it out. And so we kind of made it work. But I did a lot of just noodling around, especially because my brother was usually the one who purchased D&D books, but was very territorial. So I tended not to be able to read them in anything more than a couple pages at a time when I stole them away from him. Really, I didn't get started in doing running games or playing games until early high school, when I had a couple of friends get together who had done a lot more RPGs than I had at that point, and we noodled around. We did the usual sort of, hey, look, we're in high school. We're running really silly and retrospectively, or not sophisticated games.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so we did that for a while. But after I came back from grad school, I had a couple of friends who were really excited about Pathfinder Society and Pathfinder as a whole. They had introduced me to the beta playtest, alpha, beta, I forget which one, maybe a year or two earlier. But this was right as the Advanced Player's Guide playtest was starting up for first edition. And so they had gone to Gen Con, they had played Year of the Shadow Lodge, they were super excited about interactive specials, and they wanted to get a home group, organized play group together. So we basically started in early 2010, and within about 6-7 months, because it was at Dragon Con, we had met Mike Brock, who was at that point just a local enthusiast. Later on became one of the first venture captains, and after that became became the campaign coordinator, what we now know as organized play manager. But he kind of encouraged us to start organizing at a bunch of stores in the Atlanta area. So our group of friends basically said, all right, these 2 to 4 stores are going to be our group of 6s to run, so let's go. And it really worked out nicely, because that when Mike got hired on, then he really looked to us for a lot of insights and possibilities as to what to bring into the campaign once he arrived at Paizo. So from doing sanctioning modules and sanctioning Pathfinder Tales novels behind the scenes, to creating auction items and eventually starting to write my own scenario. I did a lot of very small and largely uncredited things before I got hired on by Paizo to be, at that point, a developer, and later on organized play lead developer.
All right. Well, John has answered our second question too, because he's just that efficient. He segued in to how he got started working at Paizo, and that, in case you guys missed it, was doing the extra tasks behind the scenes for Mike, and then coming in on as a developer.
So
everyone has their own path. It's always pretty different.
But I mean, you didn't go to school saying, "Oh, I'm going to go to school, and then what I'm going to study is I'm going to study being a developer for a game company." So where did you think your life path was going to take you?
I really thought that my life path was going to take me into academic archaeology. that I was going to go and basically become an archaeology instructor. During my undergraduate college time, I did what was called the Kenyan Honduras program, which was a semester-long excavation study abroad in Western Honduras, so really close to Compton, and it was fantastic. And then I, after graduation, went back there as a TA and continued some of the excavations I had done at a different site, though. Did graduate school in experimental archaeology, which is the replication of ancient technology. So that when you say, I don't know, can you like pierce conquistador armor with an obsidian spear point? Well, we shouldn't destroy all the artifacts that we've found. Let's make our own sort of sciences. But it's still preserving the destructive science ideas of archaeology. And it was kind of important to me because it also showed me that, I mean, archaeology is fantastic. It is great for being able to highlight and understand the stories of other people. But it is not it's not a field in which you are creating. And the more that I worked on both experimental archaeology as well as on just creating organized play material, the more I realized that I really wanted to be making things. Also, it did not help that when it comes to archaeology in the United States, a whole bunch of it is what's called cultural resource management, or contract archaeology. So basically, anytime somebody wants to build a site, you send an archaeologist to make sure that there is not some sort of archaeological site already there that needs to be dug up, understood, documented before you come in and you build a Walmart. But a lot of that work just involves going in long lines, digging a pit every 50 feet, sifting through stuff, saying there's nothing here, and moving on. So it was not even a shadow of the excitement that I had when I was in Honduras. But about the same time that I would have started my PhD for archaeology in Mesoamerica was about the same time that Honduras was named the murder capital of the world. So, like, certain things just started to close up and were not as much of options.
Fair.
So you,
yeah.
So yeah, you can set off thinking whatever the heck you want about your life, but things will change, and you'll adapt.
So what was it like then going from someone who is an archaeologist to someone who constructs stories for fantasy archaeologists? And what are some of the main lessons and understandings that you bring from your archaeological background to the way that the Pathfinder Society interacts with the world of Galarian?
Well, I mean, at first blush, archaeology is not the style of excitement one looks for in an RPG. Like it's usually faster than the whole paleontologist with a brush, but it's still slow going, and it's not the sort of thing that you roll attack rolls for. So there are certain parts of archaeology that you just do not convey into something like Pathfinder Society. On the other hand, the Pathfinder Society in-world is an organization of archaeologists. And so anything that I could bring in to say, yes, these folks are doing actual archaeology, even if it's behind the scenes, was going to have value for me. Because depending upon who you talk to in the archaeology community, if you say Indiana Jones, some people will be like, yeah, awesome, even though we recognize that's not quite how you do it, but yeah. And other people will roll their eyes and kind of say, well, yes, that sure is what the public understands about archaeology, which is mostly wrong. I tried to insert as much as I could in little drips and drabs into the Pathfinder Society of, here are bits of actual archaeology while we are not, or between the scenes that we're punching Nazis. There we go, as I speak properly. So I covered a whole bunch of these in, there was a blog post around maybe June of this year where we were revealing one of the new species that you could play in Starfinder Society because there was a Starfinder Society scenario that was largely, oh, hey, we are uncovering or just discovering or finding out about for the first time this intelligent species. Do we document them and publish everything that we find, even though they're asking us not to and that they want their identities to remain secret? But we could get so much press. Oh, we'd be so popular. Or do we respect their feelings? and like introducing these sorts of conundrums that face anthropologists today, and definitely have faced them in the past, are really cool story beats that even if we're not doing like deep archaeology, we can still be poking at these themes and making people more aware of them so that when they see this sort of context in the future, they can think back to that adventure they played and say, oh, wait, I've been here before. Why is this so familiar? Oh, right. We were absolute jerks to those fictional characters. Maybe I should not be a jerk to these real people.
So a few people have responded. Joe Junger says that your feeling is probably like a medical professional watching medical shows on TV. Nitre says that his headcanon is that the PCs in Pathfinder Society are protection hired on for the legitimate archaeologists. And then Stunt Monkey says he's always enjoyed when, John, your, quote, actual knowledge creeps into the stories and backgrounds is always a positive. As opposed to your non-actual knowledge, I guess, or Golarian knowledge.
I mean, I have been paid for the last 7 years to make things up, so but as far as the like protecting actual archaeologists, I mean, Pathfinder Society scenarios have done that on occasion. What was it? The Blood Cove scenarios at the beginning of season 2 were all about that.
Yeah.
Fury of the Fiend, you go down after an archaeological team that was missing at the beginning, and hopefully you don't scry on them right at the beginning, like when Linda was running it.
Yeah, but usually the moment that one of our stories mentions that there's another team of archaeologists, you can pretty much bet that they are either corrupt or dead. So, or somehow compromised. So I feel bad for any NPC archaeologists because usually they're just pawns in the misfortune storylines that we tend to tell.
It's like Pathfinder Contact. It's the job that has like the highest mortality rate of any job, and one time we had a home group that we just ran a ton of Pathfinder Society content with them, and we ran like, I can't even remember which adventure it is. It's one in the Mwangi Expanse where you just meet up a contact and they're there and they're fine and they tell you the things, and like the players actually took 10 minutes just at a break, like talking to this person, like, you are a badass, you're the only Pathfinder contact who's ever like been okay, how do you do it, what is your advice that we could tell other contacts?
Well,
see, when you bring up that though, Mark, it makes me think about how in an upcoming scenario then there's going to be another one of those contacts who's going to be totally fine, and then the bad guys show up and they say, thanks for leading us to this otherwise undisclosed contact, PCs. And then they'd be like, oh no, we actually sold out our contact.
Oh.
Maybe we should have invested in stealth.
Maybe we should have.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've certainly learned, and it's been interesting thinking about when it comes to archaeology and Golarion, is the extreme timetables that are involved, and what actually survives after that amount of time. If you have a Thessalonian ruin, and what you actually still have around if you don't wave your hands and say, oh, the preservation magic.
Everything's magically treated. Everything.
Absolutely everything.
That's what those rules are for.
I feel like for some of those sites that have shown up in adventures, there's a decommissioning crew for whatever society it was that goes through with some sort of atomizer full of unguent of timelessness and just sprays it all over everything before they finally put the stone door that invariably has some sort of riddle to open it over the tomb. Because, oh gosh, that stuff drives me batty at times where, like, in really good preservation, pretty good preservation situations, okay, you might have stuff that survives 1,000 years, and that feels amazing. It might survive for like 3,000 years. And if it's really dry or really oxygen deprived, maybe it's thousands of years more. But we're on a scale of 10,000 plus years in Golarion, and many of the places where we have these ruins are like, it's in the middle of a swamp.
And upside down.
So this elf who fled Earthfall fell over on this temple in the open. Their skeleton is still here. How?
It's right next to their fine wooden writing desk.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the sheaf of parchment explaining their backstory. So
that's right. That they always write down.
So yeah, I think we had kind of a Flintstones effect where we have far more stone tablets than ever would make sense in any setting. But we have to kind of put them in if we're going to have any sort of writing survive. Which also gets me on like linguistics rants of how Elven has not changed in the course of 10,000 years, and dragons have spoken with the exact same syntax since time immemorial.
Oh, yeah.
But
in our home game, when Linda was running Kingmaker, she had a petrified elf from like the Age of Darkness, and she spoke Ancient Elven, and it required linguistics or learning a separate language for to communicate.
And then I like to play around with how quickly languages evolve and how long it takes for different languages to become unintelligible. So I figured that within a few hundred years, the gnome language is just, you can't understand them anymore because it evolves so much faster. Whereas the language of dragons, the language of elves would evolve a lot more slowly than the human tongues.
Because those elves are still around.
They are. And they have some long generations with long adolescences in which they can, of course, come up with all sorts of slang to confuse their older parents.
Maybe that needs to be like a new ancestry feat for elves, is like Elven slang expert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, those 70-year-olds always messing with our language. The youngins.
There we go.
I haven't graduated from Elven High School. Why are you saying "okay, boomer" to me? Good lord. Poor elves.
Yeah. At least they officially are like biologically capable at an age that is not 100 now, and it's officially just that the Elven Society is like, yeah, we're gonna make you wait because you're not emotionally mature. You don't have the perspective.
As opposed to being like, you are not possibly able to adventure before you're 100 years old. Yeah,
a lot of times when I see, for example, like Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings, when the elves show up and largely die, I like to look at those scenes and I'm like, well, that'll take them 4,000 years to bounce back from that. Because,
well, they'll just sail off into the distance.
Yeah, well, that too.
So you mentioned that you are doing some streams for Starfinder now, and so you were on the organized play team until recently. You were the organized play lead developer, and now you've moved to be Starfinder senior developer. So what are you excited about? What you're working on now at your new position?
So after doing about 6.5 years of adventures, it's really nice to get a change of pace and work on core rules material. So basically, once I hopped onto the team with a couple of little like errata and transition projects, pardon me, I jumped onto the Starship Operations Manual, which we announced about 2 weeks ago or so. And so that's been a really neat opportunity to just do work on subsystems, to review all of the Starship math, how Starship combat works, how it could work better, ways that we could expand it and add more energy into it, as well as ways to expand the setting. Because adventures are really fun from that perspective, and being able to say, okay, let's, especially for organized play, let's go to this little corner of Andron, let's say, where we have described nothing, but we're going to do an adventure there. So, you can show little bits of setting here and there at a time, or you can introduce a little subsystem or play around with some mechanics that aren't necessarily in the core rules, sort of like we did with group chases in first edition. But being able to just jump right into core setting and core rules design has been very gratifying and a nice change of pace on that front.
Cool.
So I know that you have worked on so many things. You're an extremely prolific freelancer for Paizo. Can you tell us a bit about some of the projects you've done for Paizo that you are most excited about, most proud of, things like that?
2019 has been a really good year as far as projects that I've worked on. So a couple of the ones that came out earlier in the year, Concordance of Rivals, I absolutely adore that book. It has all sorts of really cool things going on in it. It's one I was really excited to work on because I really liked the early Book of the Damned and Chronicle of the Righteous, especially the interstitial chapters that talk about like what is true or possibly true about our cosmos. partly because I really love Tabris as a character. I also really enjoyed, and I'm really proud of my work on Druma, which I co-authored with Thurston Hillman. That Druma has for a long time been one of our like challenge regions where we look at different regions in the Inner Sea and we say, okay, Cheliax, it's ruled by devils. It's not really ruled by devils, but it's ruled by devils. And Assyrian, Egypt times, or Mana Waste. Magic doesn't work here because archmages are really mean people and can't think of ecological conservation. But when we look to Druma, we're like, and here's where there are rich people. Sometimes there's
sure
a cult.
Are rich. Their society sure is stable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here they have well-guarded caravans where almost nobody dares attack them. So you can ride from one place to another.
Without being
no
attacked
encounters.
by bandits.
Like, other than a place where, like, I imagine adventurers go to recuperate between adventures where they're like, well, now I have, like, 13 different types of horrible stress-based ticks that I've accumulated through that last dungeon. Let's just be in a place where we're not going to get ambushed by ninjas for 2 weeks. That'll be our time off. Druma really hadn't had anything going on, so it was really fun to particularly go to Eric Mona and say, we'd like to have this on the schedule. We'd like to have this on the schedule. And this sort of looking askance us being like, but Druma's the boring one. Like, yes, we know. We're going to make it interesting. We swear. So we had a whole bunch of fun, both in pitching that and in creating it. So I think Druma was really one of the products which highlighted how much I enjoy tinkering with our setting's history. I had mentioned earlier when we were talking about archaeological preservation about how 10,000 years is a really long time for something to survive. Mm-hmm. It's also a really long time for people to have like had the same culture for so long, or for them to have not forgotten about what the heck each other's history was, or for them to have stayed at the same, we have swords and they go and we stab them in the stabby bits technology, you know? But when I look at a whole bunch of our nations and regions that don't have dedicated books to them, they tend to have, well, in the case of Druma, 2 tags, like 2 events in the entire 10,000 year history. And I find it, like, initially it's frustrating because we don't have much that we know about them. But on the other hand, it's such a wonderful opportunity to puzzle piece everything together and say, well, here are the neighbors. Here's what they would have thought during this time. What about this ancestry? Oh gosh, they weren't doing anything during this time. Let's bring them in. And being able to piece all that together is really exciting and really gratifying. And so I'm excited that after Druma, I was able to do a similar thing with the upcoming World Guide 4 for Absalom. I worked on the timeline for that, and we'll see how the entire book turns out, because that's going to be an absolute leviathan of a manual.
Oh yeah, that book. I mean, you thought that you had a lot of information about Absalom in the original Absalom campaign setting. This one's going to be really amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be like one of the all-time cool city books, but we'll have to see how it turns out later on. It looks like in the chat, Ular Warlord said Concordance of Rivals is great for Ydajisk and also everything else.
Ydajisk.
Ydajisk. It's probably one of the... Is it one of the Primal Inevitables or one of the Protean folks?
It sounds like one of the Proteans, because I don't recognize that from our Primal Inevitables, because there are only 4 of those that we mentioned.
Fair enough. And I could remember 3, so I thought it was probably one of the Proteans.
Oh, Slang Protean
It's the
Lord.
Slang Protean Lord of Changing Language.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, because we've been talking about slang and then the concordance, and that's why it happened in the chat.
Nice canon
I
reference,
understand that.
Nice canon ref. It
went over all of us.
Joe asked, just curious, does Absalom have a notable undercity?
So Absalom kind of does in our existing canon, because we've definitely had a whole bunch of sewer adventures there, and if you look back to Guide to Absalom from, what was that, 2009, something like that?
Yeah, around 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. Absalom has a couple of kind of things that are hidden under the city. So there's this, there are the halls of the living, which are, wait, I think I might be confusing that with a Starfinder term, but it sounds very similar. But basically a place where you do living entombment, where if you have a political rival, you just bury them alive. You know what can go wrong in a setting that has undead. And we've had some sewer adventures with a bunch of kobolds. We have Delirium's Tangle, which shows up in Pathfinder Society number, I think it's 35, which is a labyrinth built under one of the quarters of the city. So there's a lot of stuff going on underneath Absalom, and there's even more that I think we're going to find when we get that hardcover book. But one of the inspirations that I had and Eric shared, because he had recently gone to, I think it was Italy, when we started to like say, yes, we're doing an Absalom book, is the notion that cities with continuous occupation over the course of a millennium or more just go up, 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 and up. And you get these wonderful layers of stratigraphy, and eventually you can even get these wonderful undercity layers where, like for the Seattle Underground, for example, Seattle's been around for 150 years, give or take. And even then we have an entire second understory to a good chunk of the city, just because of how it was built and built upon itself. So there's an element of that that is being highlighted in that upcoming book, and so there are going to be some more fun details, I'm sure, once it starts hitting shelves.
Makes sense. I mean, if Absalom had as many levels of the Undercity as one per 150 years.
Yeah, considering it's almost 5,000 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, I assume that there is basically a feature called like Mount Absalom, which is most of the city that's 50 feet above what was sea level beforehand.
Well, after a certain point, doesn't it start getting more compressed, though, with all the weight of everything else on top of it? So maybe only the most recent few layers, or...
It largely depends on how it's constructed. Like, if you have... Like, let's say that Absalom was built in a beautifully stable way when Eridan rose the Starstone and said, "Mer City!" And used his god magic, and then all the other people were like, "We're never going to replicate that, Eridan. Doesn't matter, god magic." You know, those original structures might be so perfectly divinely created that they are nonetheless surviving, even though thousands of tons of material has been put atop them already. And for all we know, like, we don't really know anything about the soil levels of Absalom. And like, if I think about it, I assume that Absalom would either have very thin soils because there's been minimalist erosion over the course of 5,000 years, or because it would only get about 5 inches of soil or erosion in the course of that time. It's kind of a rough benchmark for archaeology, is like roughly an inch per millennium. But it might be that he just created a whole bunch of soil levels and said, "I'm going to build the city on clay," and stuff has now sunk down into that level because there's all that weight upon it. I don't know.
I mean, the Starstone Cathedral is an original, though, right? So if the Gods Market and the Starstone Cathedral aren't sunk compared to the rest of the city, then something?
The Starstone Cathedral has extra magic? I mean, once you start getting divine intervention, then...
Yeah, I do like the idea that, you know, you have, like, Absalom from east to west, and it's like, oh my gosh, way built up. You get toward the middle of the Ascendant Court, and there's the Starstone Cathedral at the original level, so you just have these hills going down into this basin, which sounds terrible when you have, like, a runaway wagon. It's like, oh no, my like, halflings or friends are on that wagon, and you're like, zoom, and they just fall into the bottomless pit.
Or nobody's taken the test of the Starstone by rolling down on a runaway carriage, so maybe this is where we get the god that's actually a bunch of halflings in a trench coat stacked up on top of each other.
I mean, if you really are looking forward to that Design a Deity round 2 workshop that you have there, you could basically have the accidental runaway wagon deity.
Yes, yeah. It wound up in chat at about the same time we were talking about it. My wagon crossed the gap, god wagon. So
yeah.
There's a few other things.
At that point, you have the deity of basically chase encounters.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Every chase encounter is based on that. We have a bunch of other things in...
Altra says that's a plot hook in the next AP. The reason there's agriculture is because there's some magical pillars with magical fertility stones. Oh yeah, that was mentioned at PaizoCon, wasn't
That
it?
sure was. There's some other things in the chat. Wither King is wondering if there are any APs in Absalom. There will be soon. Agents of Edgewatch is the third adventure path for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So check it out at next Gen Con. It's going to has some great cops and robbers and Absalom action.
And with the Pathfinder Society based out of Absalom, we have dozens of Absalom-based adventures for you to check out.
Oh, Stump Monkey said that at the same time you did, Linda. There's also another question from Ular Warlord, which is, what is the Odiog population in Absalom like? Are there others that are as interesting as hats, and how populous are they?
I was about to say, what is the Odiog population? One lower than it was 2 years ago.
Oh, hats.
Womp womp. Yeah, I don't think that I don't think that Absalom has a high Otiog population. It's not like Corvosa, where Otiogs are kind of an institution. But I assume that it has, its share of them, especially because with 5,000 years of occupation, you're going to have some sort of bonkers person who's just like, I'm going to import Otiogs. This will be great. I'll put them down in the sewers. That way they'll clean things. They'll be like oysters, but mobile. I imagine that somebody had that silly idea, and that there are at least a few more of them running around. Also, hats had to come from somewhere. Let's be clear.
Yeah, he did. I mean,
other than Thurston.
Well, yes, but biologically, hats had to come from somewhere.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I mean, if you look at the most recent scenario where hats showed up, then you can get the sense that Thirsty may have other plans for our friend, the mysterious Odiog with the hat collection.
I believe one of those plans has been a catchphrase for Thirsty and me for about 4 years now.
Oh boy.
Oh my goodness, yes. Hats is a hilarious NPC. What was the I'm blanking right now. What was the name of the first scenario that Hats showed up in?
That was True Dragons of Absalom.
Oh yeah, right, that's right. He started in
Yep.
True Dragons. That's right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Hats.
All right.
Oh, Hats. And Thirsty has the
Hats the Odiog
Thirsty
alias.
has a Hats the Odiog alias. So.
There you go.
Good.
Ular
Yes.
Warlord has crossed his tentacles for an Odiog ancestry. I think that might be a long time crossing your tentacles for that.
That said, if you enjoy third-party materials, you can find an Otiog ancestry written for Starfinder by Crystal Fraser for Rogue Genius Games.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
There you go.
It even has some sort of kind of bonkers, like, Otiog in a wig with lipstick art on the cover.
Oh my god.
There you go.
That's amazing.
So, Rocket Lettuce, Brian is wondering, how would Werner Herzog teach organized play?
Oh gosh, they're seeing those tweets, huh? Yeah. So that was something from about 2 evenings ago, where Michael Sayer, one of the other organized play developers, and I got to talking about a variety of different things, and I don't even know how Werner Herzog got into that. We must have been talking about something bonkers.
Apparently, the two of you were at the office really late at night, and that's when those kinds of things usually happen.
Yeah. So, so I think we're just kind of poking fun at the sorts of questions that we would get in organized play sometimes, and we're just like, somebody sits down. Like I've gotten to the point where I don't like introducing my characters by their class. I just say, like, yes, the Starfinder Witch Weird is a negotiator. What class is that? It's a Solarian, but come on, I'm a negotiator. And like we sort of joked about Werner Herzog. And the GM's like, okay, so what sort of character are you playing? It is not important what character I am playing. This character is a representation of all the things that we could understand in this universe, but we can't. Tell me, GM. I have a name. My name's Brian. Okay, Brian. Have you ever seen Madness? Yeah. I mean, we portray Madness a fair bit in this game, but have you seen it? No, we haven't actually. Like, I mean, sure, it has statistics. No, the problem is you cannot see Madness, yet people keep on trying to portray it in visual medium. You can't do that. But my character is an extension of what could be Madness, and so I play this character so that possibly for one fleeting moment, we might be able to have a wonderful understanding of what the human condition even is. Oh wow, Herner, that's really deep and artistic. You're reading too much into it. I'm just here to role play, sort of moment. You just have these little scenes that pop into mind as you imagine how the hell he would be at an organized play table, because I'm sure it would not go smoothly.
Fair enough.
I mean, this is what happens when you work at Paizo. Your mind just goes off into all these different scenarios and what ifs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not good
to
for the
share
players.
those with people.
Wither
Yeah,
King
sometimes
says
they're not good for players either,
10 out of 10
it's like
for John's acting, says Wither King.
Yeah. Well, if you ever get a chance to play at one of John's tables or to GM for him, I highly recommend it.
it's a wild fun time. Except I tend to run long games because I usually am very accommodating of when people have silly tactics or strategies. I'm like, all right, sure, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Not covered in the scenario at all, but yeah, if you want to try and like behead the Empress, that sounds like a great way to go and recover the scepter of mundanity, and like I'm sure your venture captain will be very pleased. Let's go.
Every last second of the time allocated to you for the win.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Linda and John mantra.
Oh, Unfortunate Pumpkin has just awarded you a hero point for your awesome roleplay.
Ooh, exciting.
And Rocket Lettuce, who asked the original question, says that was awesome. Thank you for the answer.
Cool.
Joe Junker says so many dark alleys of the mind space.
Yeah,
Pretty
exactly.
much.
Do not look too closely at what lurks within them. You will not come back the same as you were before.
Mm-hmm.
So does a 29 hit? 29 numbers mean nothing in this scene. You must ask instead how I identify and whether that has any impact on any of what we're doing. And it's just like, he's such a troll. It would be delightful.
Yes, but we're talking about the attack. The attack. And you would
exactly.
distill down the true art of martial combat. The subtleties that have evolved over thousands upon thousands of years to a single number.
Inconceivable. All right. So, yeah, they're putting in some squirrels because we have definitely squirreled off into a Werner Herzog sort of situation here.
Is it really a squirrel, though?
Is it? I don't know. We asked a question to John.
This is a conversation with John Compton.
We can ask John any question we want. Like, we could say, John, what do you think of leshes? It's important to our channel.
I think that at some point you're going to need to do a little emoji that is a squirrel like unzipping its head as though it were, and then just showing the leshy that's inside of it, because ultimately all of your little emojis are leshies.
Okay, there we go.
Well, you know what, John? If you can figure out a way to get that to convey that concept in 72 by 72 pixels, then I might go for it.
That's right.
No. I have such faith in your own abilities, Linda, that this is an empowering moment.
With my pixel art program, trying to figure things out.
Taking off its head, it must be a gourd leshy. Apparently on Reddit, they said that the gourd leshy broke the game because in the pie contest, it stuffed 10 of the pies into its head.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to prove that it has them because it has that whole divination resistance.
That's right. True. And then Eric Mona apologized on Reddit for breaking the game.
Could have told you leshies were going to be a bad idea.
Wait, Yotaro says, I can't wait to see the wand removing its disguise. I guess that would be the dandelion leshy to fit into that wand?
Yeah, maybe.
That would certainly be a lot clearer as to what's inside.
Yes. Well, I mean, I made a dandelion plant creature for Starfinder called the Raxolite, and I was told, don't make it a leshy, and I definitely didn't make it a leshy, and then the art came back, and it's totally a leshy, but it's not my fault.
It's totally a leshy.
I was all like, these are the super hyper technologically advanced creatures who do all these kinds of interesting things with their spaceships and their levitation networks and stuff like that. And then the art comes back and it's a leshy, but I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to say, this time, John, it was not my fault.
Starfinder used to be safe.
Nothing is safe from the eternal wall
yeah,
of
but
leshy.
when did it stop being safe, John? Was it when you got in there, or was it when Linda got the leshy?
Alien Archive 3.
Okay.
Oh, okay, we got a joke here. What do you call a leshy drunk on dandelion wine?
Cannibalistic?
A lushy.
That's coming from chat from Joe Jungers.
Oh no.
Okay.
You win the Cheesy Wordplay Award.
Let's talk about the ancestry John likes more than Leshy's. Gnomes.
Gnomes are good. Yeah, gnomes are delightful.
Mm-hmm.
Gnomes are an ancestry that, before I started working at Paizo, I largely derided, in part because they seem to attract people who just wanted to be silly. But the more that I read into them, especially once I got to Paizo and realized that there were a bunch of people at Paizo who were kind of making the same sort of snarky remarks about gnomes, like there's a certain defensive instinct that kicked in. It's like, no, you can't say those things about gnomes. Is there nobody here who's going to champion them? Fine, I will say positive things about gnomes. How about that? And so there have been several different ancestries that I've tried to kind of make my own, only to realize that other people were interested in them. But gnomes have never really had that competition. So I've been delighted to play around with them for the past 7 years.
Whoever was making fun of gnomes, I guess they created you, in a sense, as the gnome king.
In a way, yeah.
Yes,
like some sort of twisted Batman villain, I am a product of some sort of terrible thing.
Well,
but here's the thing, though, John. The cycle continued because if it wasn't for your constant poking fun of like the mild Leshy stuff that Linda did all the way at the beginning, she might not be the queen of Leshies and
there would not be these Leshy emojis and all these other things going on. So really, when you think about it, John, you have to take some responsibility.
Well, yeah. I can take some responsibility
I
for
saw
it,
that face, John.
But there is a certain degree to which, oh god, oh no, it's a high pitched going on. Yeah, there'd be moments. There'd be moments when we were in the organized play cube and like we'd be having a perfectly productive conversation, and then Linda would get this sinister grin on her face as she just sort of spins horror movie like. You're like, and I'm like, what? What are you gonna? Oh no, you're gonna say it. Leshy. Like, complete non sequitur, Linda.
Yep. Well, you know what?
There was one time in the design room back when we used to have rooms that like Steven sent out a thing that had Leshies as one of the possible options to write, and then just Linda like ran up to the room and was like, Leshy! And like Steven just like almost jumped out of his chair.
I didn't realize that he was getting up to leave the room,
Yep.
and I almost bowled him over because I was so excited to go over and dramatically say Leshy, and then he looked at me like, what the heck?
It's kind of hard to break Steven's cool, but having Linda just sort of Chucky doll into the design office is definitely one of them.
Yep.
I seem to remember you also creeping the hell out of Wes that one time when you had some sort of message to deliver to him, but you left it with like a drawing of a Leshy with a knife.
Oh, well, there were two things that you're conflating here. There was
Okay.
the time when I bought him a Tonberry plush. And then I took a series of pictures of it creeping closer and closer to his desk in a threatening fashion. And there was the other time when there was that Hell's Vengeance blog that he wrote where he was like talking about how good it was that your characters not good, but how fun it was that your characters got to kill Leshies.
And no, be honest with us, Linda. How good it is.
Yeah.
Oh, and then so I made a comment about how gourd Leshies don't realize that using a knife to carve someone a new face isn't a polite thing to do.
Yep. There you go.
And then he was like, help me. And then the message words are like, you're on your own.
That happened.
Including some of the Pharasma avatar, who is like, you must face your judgment.
It takes a fair amount to unsettle Wes, but as he was wont to say, Linda's a very nice person, but there's a darkness within that girl.
Yeah.
Or that she's made of knives? Is that
in
his farewell blog?
Yeah, no, he said I was made of knives.
There you go.
It's all of the above.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So there's another question for you, John. I'm sure you'll love this one from Wither King. How many Kitsune are there in Absalom total?
That is something for which we will have to wait and see in the next book, because I'm assuming that I don't actually know how city stat blocks work in second edition. I haven't had to create them yet, but I assume that there's going to be a listing of like 14% other. or the like. And then you can make your own extrapolation and make Absalom as Kitsune full or as Kitsune free as you please.
Yep. Because in your game, all of the other could just all be the same thing.
Having a sizable other makes sense for Absalom, because if you want to have such a cosmopolitan, campaign-centering city, the ability of the GM to just naturally and easily say, these are the ancestries I want to highlight more. They're here in the city.
That said, if you want to go by first edition standards and you measure all of the Pathfinder Society characters ever created, then out of its population of 350,000, I'm pretty sure about 500,000 of those people are Kitsunes. And Pathfinders.
And gunslingers.
Yeah, and gunslingers. Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
How many things are there, how many categories of, whether it's ancestry or like class or members of organizations?
We know how many guns in total were created in Golarion, because Alkenstar makes a certain number each month. Yes. And more than that number are being used by the Pathfinder Society.
Yeah, I assume that just like people wanted to always gun juggle so that they could reload faster, there's sort of a quantum teleportation of different guns that no gunslinger ever has their gun for more than about 20 combat rounds per day. But when they put it back in a holster, it is in fact just sort of a placeholder as somebody else can reach into their own holster and draw it out. So that way you can use the 44,000 guns that do exist in Alkenstar and beyond, even though you have your 500,000 gunslingers. And usually when you reach down for your pistol or your musket or your double-barreled musket or your pepperbox musket or your I don't know how many times I need to pull this trigger musket, that you will draw out somebody's musket most of the time, but there's always that 1 in 1,000 chance that you reach for it and you just get like a spoon, because it's just the universe trying to make up for the fact that all other pistols with that enhancement bonus are in use.
There we go.
And is that also how you explain with intelligent items, so that the exciting journeys of Gammon the Misforged from the hips of hundreds of different people?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you basically have an Aliens Ripley clone of intelligent items, and you're just like, so, oh wow, is that also Gammon the Misforged? And it's like, kill me, please. Oh god. Yeah, because we did not have many intelligent items in Pathfinder Society's first edition, and I sure did see a lot of Gammons.
Did you ever see a Gammon saying hello to Gammon at a table?
I have heard of that happening, but I never had it.
Was there ever a Gammon who had Glory Mane as the sword and board build?
There were people who really wanted to collect all of the intelligent items, and I don't know whether they're really hoping to get just constantly ego controlled and have the intelligent items juggle them. But we create options. People look at them, they say that'll be fun, and then it's up to the GMs to survive that 4-hour experience.
You know what? Sometimes the ego can be helpful. Whatever scenario it is where you go find Deondo Klein in a bath and they take all of your stuff, they took my intelligent item and then got possessed by its ego, the person who did that, and it wound up making the encounter a lot more different and easier for us, actually. Although I didn't have my sword and I was a Black Blade Magus, so there was that also.
That was a really funny encounter to run that.
You don't need class features.
Nah.
Yeah, I didn't need it. People were shocked that they were like, you're giving up your Black Blade? He said we have to give up our items.
Yep.
So there's a question from Nitrace. I'll put it into terminology that we're all recognized from the surveys. Extremely excited, very excited, somewhat excited, not so excited, or not at all excited for the Starship Operations Manual.
It varies a little bit by day, because that's kind of just how development works. There are a bunch of times when you look at what you're working on and you say, this is going to be so cool. I want to post about this right now because this is so cool, but I shouldn't because we have promotion standards and and then there are other days where, you look at what you're working on and you say, this is something that is either kind of rough in how it was turned over, or it's cool, but it doesn't accomplish what the book needs it to. Or this is what the author turned over is cool. It still needs a lot of work to make sure that it works in all the ways we expect it to. And oftentimes so it can interact with the other pieces of the book that the author didn't know about. But some of those projects are easier than others. And so Like last week, I was working on one that things clicked together pretty well, and I was super excited about it, and ran some playtests last weekend that went really well. This week, I'm on a different section where it is a much tougher thing that I'm developing, and it's probably going to run into next week. But I'm kind of looking at it and be like, I will no doubt really like this when it is done. Right now, I need to walk away from it for a while because it has me very cross. And that's. I mean, it works for books. It works for the scenarios that we would develop. It works for new mechanics. Any of the above.
Any part of that creation process, yeah. I mean, I know sometimes with scenarios, it comes in and then you realize, oh, wait, I should have connected to this other thing, or, oh, wait, that map's out of print, this needs to go in this whole different area, or, oh, wait, this other thing happened and I don't have this, and then you know it's going to take a much longer time. And you have to decide what you're going to spend your time on, because you don't have the time to do everything that you have to do.
Looks like Nitrace's wife wrote part of the book, and so he wants to read it to try to figure out which parts that she contributed to.
Okay. I mean, I know various people that could be, but I don't know Nitrace well enough to say who that is.
Yep. I don't know. Nitrace is Brendan. Maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't. Wither King has added me with no...
You have our attention, Wither King.
Oh, he did not mean to do so.
Us. Well,
okay.
You got our attention, nonetheless.
There we go. It was J.N. Childs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Now John knows, but he can't tell you because, as Joe said...
That's right.
Jan worked on a couple of different pieces of the book.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. Have we hit all the highlights? It's been for about an hour. John, were there any more topics you wanted to talk about that we hadn't gotten to yet for you?
I'm in pretty good shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me check chat. I think we have covered pretty much all of their questions here. Yup. We got all the questions for chat. So if that's it, everybody, then remember to check out Pathfinder Friday tomorrow at 4 to 5:30. It's extra long. And, oh, wait, there is one more question. What was the name of the kingdom that the Golden Dragon controls? That would be Hermea.
Yep.
And how is its relationship with Absalom? That would be maybe play some adventure paths.
Yeah.
Are you planning to run at PaizoCon, John? There's another question.
Yeah, there is one last one from Katrina Numbat.
So in past PaizoCons, I have run usually two different things. One of them is Galarian Ender, which is an adaptation of Ryan Macklin's Myth Ender. Basically, it is you are god-killing people with chips on your shoulders, and you kill one of the gods. And so we do Galarian Ender, in which you are part of the Galarian setting, and you are trying to kill one of the Galarian gods. So usually we kill either Rovagug, Sarenrae, Irori, Asmodeus, Aridin, or...
Shalyn?
I'm missing somebody.
Shalyn, did you ever kill her?
Nethys.
Nethys, okay.
Nethys is another one. I think at one point we killed Grotus, but usually it's those core six, because those are the ones I have pre-built.
Zon-Kuthon and then use Shalyn as a weapon. Was that a thing that you told the story about?
Yeah, that was last year.
Okay.
This year. Yeah, that was
Sure.
That was a good one. Because when people the stat blocks for those deities are not super complex. You can kind of build them in about 5 minutes. So they're like, we want to kill Zon-Kuthon. I was like, sure, I can make that work. Give me a couple seconds. Yeah, so deities have the ability to do something called sundering, where they take one of their weapons, and your weapons are basically anything that you could conceivably use to harm others. So, like, as a Mythender, you could weaponize your hope. You could weaponize kindness. You can weaponize disappointment. You can also just have a sword, or impossibly powerful elemental energies. It's your call. And so what I really love doing with these greater myths is giving them some sort of living ally, because there are 3 weapon types: relics, which are things; intrinsic, which is your power; and allies, which are cohorts, which are people who are with you. And so Zon-Kuthon had Shaylin as one of his allies, and every time they heard Zon-Kuthon, Shaylin would power up, and then we got to round 2 or 3, and Zon-Kuthon said, all right, normally I would drain the power from my ally, but I can just destroy my ally to get twice as much power. So he basically was like, well, that's okay. Shellin will protect me, and then like snapped her neck and threw her to the side. And everyone's like, you can't do that. It's like, well, that's what's called being evil. Come on, people. So yeah, we've had some good times with that. So I tend to run Galarian Ender because that's just a fun pickup and play and shout loudly and describe things way too much game.
And Myth is also a game for if you want to roll an absurd number of d6s.
Absurd. Yeah. And then the other one that I've run has varied a bit because for a while we did things called Season 0 Revisited and later on Season 0 Reborn, which were basically taken out of retirement and Season 0 Revisited. Mm-hmm. Where we took retired scenarios from Season 0 in Pathfinder Society and we updated their rules to make them more in line with what we would expect from a scenario published these days. And then we started doing Season 0 Revisited, which were taking some of the ones that were not retired, but giving them a fresh coat of paint and, of course, bringing them up to the full Pathfinder rules and running those again. Now that we have second edition up, I don't quite know what we're going to be doing. We'll see.
I'm actually running it out of retirement at an upcoming convention. Scarab wants me to do that. I didn't think I was going to be running another one of those again, but yeah, it's going to be.
It's an out of retirement to first.
It's out of retirement to first, yeah. Because otherwise, I'd have to like.
Yeah, it seems like it would be really big if you.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and once you do an out of retirement for second edition, you know exactly what question you're going to get, Linda.
Oh yes.
Well,
do I get credit?
All the... John, are you relishing not being the one to have to field these questions anymore?
Where are the chronicle sheets? Is this replayable for credit, Linda?
You know better, Compton.
No, the trouble is I do know better.
But you don't care.
Oh, I do.
Shameless again.
Yup. Yeah, so I don't know whether I assume that at some point the org play team will start to gather together and be like, are we doing something like this? And we'll see.
All right.
Oh, John is so good at channeling the players.
Oh yeah, yeah. You should see it. Sometimes at a meeting, you just have to like figure out. But what would the players say? And then John will do like.
Well, this is what. Okay,
he'll just tell you what they're gonna say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's important to be able to have it at different discussions, thinking about what are some of the more common player perspectives, and taking those perspectives when we discuss how different policies are going to impact people. Yeah,
and that role sort of juggles around the team a little bit. I think I do it a little bit more often, but or would, and it was sort of okay, we have a policy, and one of us would then say, okay, let me play the part of an angry person on the internet for a moment.
Oh, I've stepped into that role a lot, John. I have been the let me take this down just a moment. But what about this problem person? In quite a few reasons.
Oh boy.
Or if you have fixed A, does that mean you're also going to fix C?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
no. Well, if you already did that, then.
Yep. Rex the Liquid says scarily accurate. Oh boy. Mm-hmm. Rocket Lad says weaponized former organized play lead.
Oh god. Ooh. Oh no. I don't want to be swung around as a weapon. Like, we left behind the body bludgeon barbarian rage power for a reason.
Don't worry, John. I have 5 strength. I couldn't lift you anyway.
Well, yeah, but even if you can't, somebody else will get the idea. And then before you know it, then you have...
Now you've just announced it to the internet, so there's really no coming back from that.
Yeah, but fortunately, the internet should also know that we as developers and professionals and as people have boundaries, and it's always a good and polite thing to ask somebody at a convention or any situation before you hug them or throw them around.
Because everyone knows about boundaries on the internet.
Everybody can learn about boundaries, and just as how I tried to use Pathfinder Society scenarios to teach something about archaeology, I hope that the convention experience that you get through organized play can teach everyone something about boundaries.
The more you know.
And knowing is half the battle.
We can do the marks of wand. The little wand. The more you know.
All right.
All right.
So, think with that, it's a good time for us to say goodbye to YouTube before we roll into some more Twitch stuff again.
That's right. So, bye YouTube. See you next time.
Bye!